Introducing aPriori.
Welcome to the expert track at aPriori's annual Manufacturing Insights Conference. My name is Cecily Power, and I am the product manager for AP Analytics.
Hi, and I'm Dave McDermott. I'm a business consultant over in EMEA here.
And today we'd like to share with you how to get the most out of your aPriori deployment as an expert user. So we'll start today with an overview of AP Analytics and its key features. Then we'll cover a range of reporting use cases directly applicable to the expert user, from best practices for day-to-day analysis to addressing market challenges as they arise. We'll wrap up by giving you a preview of what is coming soon to AP Analytics. AP Analytics is aPriori's business intelligence tool created to help engineers and team leaders drive cost savings and design improvement through analysis of aPriori results. There are two capabilities within AP Analytics that I'd like to highlight. We have out-of-the-box reporting and we have ad hoc reporting. Out-of-the-box reports are pre-built and they are ready to use. We offer more than 50 different out-of-the-box reports that meet common design, source, and quote use cases. Ad hoc reports are fully customizable, so a user can select from hundreds of aPriori data fields and upwards of 40 different visualization formats to generate reports by dragging and dropping fields into rows and columns. Generally speaking, these fields relate to an aPriori user, a scenario, costing results, and manufacturability metrics. Together, these two reporting tools are powerful. Out-of-the-box reports guide engineering teams through best practices for day-to-day analysis, and ad hoc reports provide engineering teams with the freedom to create reports on the fly that are relevant to urgent market challenges. So let's first take a closer look at out-of-the-box reports. These pre-built reports model analysis best practices for all our key manufacturing use cases. As I mentioned, design, source, and quote. When you launch an out-of-the-box report, you will have the opportunity to select the data set, the time frame, currency, as well as other relevant sorting and filtering that will make the report relevant to you as the reporting user. Our main report categories include outlier analysis, that's defined by identifying cost and manufacturability outliers. We have project tracking, which is defined by monitoring project status against targets, so looking at a grouping of components and setting a target. We have value tracking, defined by estimating cost avoidance or cost savings, depending on the use case. And we have activity tracking, defined by managing team adoption and regular usage of aPriori. So to illustrate how out-of-the-box reports can be used for day-to-day analysis, I will show an example focused on the design use case. But to learn more about our other playbooks for manufacturing use cases, other than the design use case, I encourage you to consult our product documentation. So let's see an example for the design use case, where a design engineer leverages a series of out-of-the-box reports to identify outlier parts, make design improvements, and track cost avoidance. So I start here with outlier analysis, where I'm evaluating a set of similar parts and looking to identify potential outliers. Let's look at the out-of-the-box report. Here, we are viewing a set of similar components, all within the same process group, sheet metal. On the y-axis, we are looking at fully burdened cost, and on the x-axis, we are looking at finish mass. So we are comparing cost over mass across a set of similar components. The green line that you're seeing is the line of best fit, and the blue lines are outlier distance lines that can be configured in the input controls. So what we want to spot here are parts that are above average for cost over mass within this grouping of components. Other factors that we want to pay attention to here are annual spend. So the size of the bubble indicates annual spend, as well as design to cost risk. So the color of the bubble indicates risk, with a blue bubble meaning it's a lower risk part, and an orange bubble meaning it is a higher risk part. So here we see there's an orange bubble representing a part that is hitting through the outlier distance line. This part is called sheet metal 5, and it looks like it could be a potential outlier. So next, I want to drill down and understand why sheet metal 5 might be an outlier and how I may be able to bring its cost down. For this analysis, I can use the same out-of-the-box report, and I can click to drill down into design to cost and design for manufacturability metrics. So here we've drilled down, and we're looking at design to cost metrics such as number of unique bends and number of total bends, as well as design for manufacturability metrics, such as issue count in various categories. When we focus on our part sheet metal 5, which was our potential outlier, that is shown as the top row in both of the charts. We see that there is some opportunity for design improvement. For example, by utilizing only one unique bend size, or addressing some of the hole issues that we're seeing here. Both of those changes, if feasible to address, could lower cost. AP Analytics purposely provides a very high-level information about these design metrics, leaving it to AP Design and AP Professional to provide detailed feedback as well as recommended next actions. So we encourage, after viewing this report, an engineer to go back into our other applications to then make the necessary changes. After I have addressed the outliers and I've recost my part, I want to estimate how much cost I avoided. The aPriori basic cost avoidance report comes in handy here. This report requires 2 scenarios per part to then calculate cost avoidance. There's a scenario named initial and a scenario named final. These scenario names can either be set during the design process or set in bulk prior to running this report. And then cost avoidance is calculated as the difference between that design starting and ending point. So the difference in cost between the initial and final scenario for a particular part. So this is the base cost avoidance report. Here we have all of the sheet metal parts that we were looking at in the outlier analysis and design to cost reports. And for the purpose of this demo, let's say we've made some modifications to sheet metal 5, the outlier part, to lower its cost. So what we want to do is make sure that we've recorded an initial and final scenario for this part so that it can be picked up by the basic cost avoidance report. And then the report, as it does here, can show that we have saved 12 cents, amounting to $636 of annual cost avoidance. We can also see in this report that other parts or assemblies have associated cost avoidance. And we can see what our total cost avoidance is for this entire portfolio of components. Once the team is comfortable with manual costing and basic cost avoidance, we encourage automating your coverage of costed parts and of cost avoidance calculation with our AP Generate solution and the automated cost avoidance report. So just to show you here, this is the automated cost avoidance report. It's a variation of the basic cost avoidance report, and it is designed for use with aPgenerate. The report automatically estimates cost avoidance as the difference between a part's highest historical cost and its latest cost. Moving to automated aPriori solutions will expedite time to value, allowing aPriori to cover a greater percentage of your parts behind the scenes so that the design engineering team can focus on making improvements where they matter. The best way to get started using our out-of-the-box reports, like these cost avoidance reports, others that I've talked about today, or even others in our repository, we recommend to consult our product documentation or work with our aPriori expert services team. aPriori is here to help get you set up and familiar with these reports. And as always, while you're using them, we really appreciate your feedback. So please continue to submit ideas for enhancements to existing reports, as well as ideas for entirely new out-of-the-box reports. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dave McDermott to talk about the ad hoc reporting feature within AP Analytics. So Dave will demonstrate how ad hoc reporting can be leveraged to address current market challenges, such as supplier risk, material volatility, and profitability.
Thank you, Cecily. So ad hoc reporting is a capability which allows us to generate reports for almost anything. And the principle is we extract from the costings and evaluations that have been done by aPriori as many variables as we wish to look at, and the scope at which we can look across our enterprise is up to us. In fact, with aPgenerate, we can be looking at a scope of all the components and all the products that we are designing and manufacturing today. And this becomes really important because, as we saw earlier in the conference, there are many pressures that are affecting manufacturing today. The pressures of inflation impacting margin, supply chain risk that leads to disruption and the inability to manufacture products, the skills gap that is always going in the wrong direction, and of course, sustainability is becoming more important. And as we learned in this conference, many companies are doing many things about it. There are lots of great organizations thinking about solutions for it. But with aPriori and with analytics, we help provide the insight to address some of these challenges. So let's look at them one by one. So first of all, when it comes to tackling inflation, one of the biggest drivers around this is the cost of material, of course. Material prices have been rising up and down. The volatility of that has created real problems from a margin perspective. So what we can do with ad hoc reporting is look across an entire product or a range of products that we are delivering today to understand what our commitment and exposure is to material. And here we have not just one ad hoc report, but a dashboard that shows us, for every material grade that we are using across our products, the complete consumption requirement. And this includes the material that's going to be scrapped. In other words, it looks at everything we need to buy from a stock perspective. And this red bar here represents the biggest exposure to risk. This grade of aluminium, we need 684,000 kilograms per year of this grade of material. And therefore, if the price of that material rises, we could be in trouble. So our dashboard here tells us where we're exposed as we're designing our products. Now, of course, nobody has a crystal ball. So in the absence of a view of the future in our dashboard, we can also have pages in here that show us how material prices are rising. Here's the one for aluminium that gives us a trend. And I can monitor that trend in my dashboard to help me understand the potential problems that are coming towards me. And in the absence of a crystal ball, well, I can use AP Analytics again to create an ad hoc report to look at the bookends of possibility. So this ad hoc report is looking at the profitability of my product or products on the vertical axis versus that material price that we're exposed to. That grade of aluminium, if that grade of aluminium gets to $6.7 per kilogram, then we are losing money on our products. That tells us where to set our alert levels on material pricing. And all that's happening here is that we are just tracking the amount of material required for our products with ad hoc reports, and then using ad hoc reporting to look at different scenarios to see what the impact's going to be. So I don't need a crystal ball to predict the future, but I can let myself know when it will become a problem. And that's just one of the areas in which we can tackle the pressures on margin and inflation. But within aPriori and AP Analytics, we have many more ways of using that data to look for, identify problems and identify solutions as well. When it comes to supply chain risk, again, companies are thinking more about a supply solution based around risk more than cost, but of course, cost cannot be compromised. So here within AP Analytics, because again, we're using potentially the power of AP Generate, we can look at many, many more evaluations. And here, I'm taking a work package, a group of components I need to be manufactured, and costing them in every region of the world. Now, as we can see, at the right-hand side are all the low-cost regions. And there's no real surprises here, but in a world of supply chain disruption and risk, I want to pick the regions which are close to me or the ones where I know there are less likely to be trouble in these regions. And we can see that these regions represent different parts of the world in Central America, South America, Eastern Europe, the Far East. They're all kind of represented over here. So I can start to identify potential places in the low-cost region I can manufacture, as well as perhaps lower risk regions in high-cost manufacturing places like Western Europe. I can also look for some of these little inflection points where I can take advantage of a gap between my work package cost being this price in Spain and a much lower price in Portugal. Two countries that have a land border, but a completely different rate of manufacture, and therefore for certain work packages, it becomes efficient to get them made there. And then when we start to make decisions around where we are going to supply, we might want to consider other factors like, say, logistics. Here, for example, we're now taking that same work package and using an ad hoc report to break it down to look at the costs between China and Mexico. And this now includes an estimation of logistics based on the size and the weight of the components. Therefore, everything over this side, the black and the blue bars represent they're about the same price. So I would go for the lowest risk region. Let's say it could be China for that. Over the left-hand side, we have a greater difference between Mexico and China. The very left-hand component is almost half the price, and that's because it's a small, lightweight, high-value component, which the logistics aren't going to compromise the complete price in that part of the world. I can also think about resupplying Mexico and not be so concerned about potential trade wars and price conflicts in the future because of elections and wars and all sorts of global events. In other words, the difference here is so large that I could consume any risk if things go a bit wrong in the future. I could also decide to have a multi-source solution from two regions. I can even break my work package up to take advantage of the best cost solution. And I can only make these decisions around risk without compromising cost because I have access to great level of insight at my fingertips in AP Analytics. Closing the skills gap in the manufacturing world today is always a challenge. And what Cecily showed was the ability to look at a set of data to understand where the potential outliers are from a design for manufacturability perspective without every engineer having to be thinking about it all the time. We can just find the ones that are really important. But there are lots of other factors into the whole equation. For example, from a manufacturability and from a stocking and pricing perspective, the stock selection I make when I design parts, especially in sheet metal, can affect cost and manufacturability and risk. So when my engineering team don't have access to insights around what materials are good to buy in certain values, we can use the ad hoc report here to look at everything that we are designing by stock thickness. Every bar on this report shows me the volume required at every stock thickness for sheet metal. And here we have a thickness of 7.92 millimeters and a 6.35, which is actually an imperial grade. And then we have 6 millimeter over here. In fact, we have 3 very similar stock sizes in different volumes. And if, for example, this particular grade of stock was the most cost effective to buy, then I should inform my design teams that these material stocks I should try and avoid and use this one instead. And in actual fact, I might be using a thicker stock of material, but because of access to the market, I may actually get the thicker stock at a cheaper price. I also have to consider supply chain as well and risk in the supply chain. So if a particular stock starts to become scarce and therefore expensive, then my design team don't need the knowledge of the supply chain because AP Analytics will tell me where the problems are likely to arise. In fact, there are many more reports that we can use to take the place of engineering having to think about the world challenges and using reporting to tell us where we're going against good practice. And finally, sustainability has become much more important for many companies. And even if it isn't important today, it's going to be important certainly in the next 2 or 3 years' time. And the time to start thinking about it, of course, is now. As we're introducing new products into the market, as we're designing new products, we still need to think about what the impact on sustainability is going to be. And as Cecily is about to talk about, we are developing new reports inside AP Analytics to look at the breakdown of the carbon information that comes out of the simulations we do in aPriori. So here's an example of what we're about to release. Every component on here has a calculation on the carbon footprint from a material perspective up the vertical axis and from a process perspective along the bottom axis. The size of each bubble in here represents the number of DFM issues, manufacturability issues. Therefore, large bubbles up in the top right-hand corner represent components that are not just difficult to make but consume a lot of carbon. And these are very obvious candidates for design for manufacturability to take out process content and make the carbon contribution lower. And because every organization is not just trying to address today's problem, but moving towards net zero, then they can continually focus down on every component in the business. Now I can drill down to these components over here. Well, this is all about the process footprint, high process footprint for carbon, and these ones over here about material. So engineering could think about different material solutions, and supply chain and manufacture could think about alternative processes that we could use, and then the whole organization can design towards those processes, and we all collaborate around carbon. And of course, cost as well. The two go hand in hand. So those are just some high-level examples of how we support the different initiatives that we have to deal with in an organization, but more importantly, how we tackle emerging problems of the world, because they're not going to end today, let's be honest with ourselves. Next year, we'll have a new set of problems. And ad hoc reporting helps us identify where the problems are going to be, and more importantly, how we can go about solving.
Thank you, Dave. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about what is coming soon to AP Analytics. So today we've talked about cost and manufacturability. Those are key pillars to aPriori component analysis. But given the increasing importance of monitoring and limiting energy consumption and carbon footprint in the manufacturing industry, I am excited to share that we will be introducing a set of sustainability variables in AP Analytics ad hoc reporting so that sustainability can also become a core element of our component analysis. So please stay tuned for this in a future upcoming release. And with that, on behalf of Dave and I thank you very much for viewing this presentation. And I'll leave it with, if you haven't already started, please take advantage of the AP Analytics out-of-the-box and ad hoc reporting capabilities to maximize your value from aPriori.
aPriori, making profitability and sustainability a reality for a better world.